ice cold. So we're back for another video, and today what I want to do is show you how we can transform our footage from looking like this footage into this by simply using one, maybe two nodes, and there's no LUTs involved. One thing I will recommend downloading is my free DCTL to find middle gray in DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. Like I said, completely free. It's just going to help us with this tutorial, and recommend downloading it, and accompanied with it you'll actually be able to access this clip that I'm going to be using and editing in this tutorial. So follow along, use the same clip that I'm using. It's a nice, beautiful clip of myself. But yeah, let's dive into it. So one thing first, just because it's going to save us some time, is typically when people hear of creating a film look, they think of implementing an S-curve for their contrast. And that's great in theory, but a lot of the times people reach for presets, they reach for certain adjustment knobs and sliders. And the issue with that is those adjustments are typically symmetric. The issue with that is film doesn't operate in a symmetric manner. So the shadow end and the highlight end of your film is going to react differently for different physical reasons. Essentially different parts of the emulsion doing different jobs. So that means that the two ends have to be built separately. But to be clear, I'm not saying that we're not going to be building an S-curve. We are still building an S-curve today. It's just we're going to be manipulating the shadow portion of the S-curve and the highlight portion of the S-curve separately, and they're not going to look the same. So if you haven't watched my previous video that I did, that was part one in the series. So that just went over the color management side of things and the initial node setup that we're using, going over the exposure and shot matching and white balance. So go watch that, skim through it if you're unfamiliar. So essentially we're using a color managed timeline with DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate as our timeline color space, and then output color space is Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. I'm not going to go into why I did that in the previous video, so just set it up as I have it here and then hit save, and we're going to dive into it. So today we're using a Blackmagic clip of myself. You're welcome. So the beauty about that is in our camera raw, we can already set that up. So it already automatically knows the color science that this was shot on. If you're not using the clip I provided, or it's not a Blackmagic clip, all you have to do is just right click on your clip in the clip section here and just select input color space, and you'll select whatever color space for whatever camera it was shot on. Let's dive into it. So this is what we have so far from our last video. We have our exposure and white balance adjustment and our shot match. So today we're going to be working in our group post clip section. So just click on the clip drop down here, and we're going to go over to our group post clip section. As you can see, we don't have anything here yet. It's because we're building it out. This is going to be a series that goes on for a little while until we actually build out a full power grade that we are happy with and creates a look that we're proud of. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be working in our custom curves tab. I want to first drag and drop the DCTL effect into this node, and like I said, go download my free DCTL for your mid-gray finder. It's going to allow you to find out where mid-gray is for DaVinci Intermediate. And spoiler alert, it's at 0.336. So we're just going to type that in here. So 0.336. So as you can see, we have this lovely little gray square that pops up here. You can choose where you want it to be located. Totally up to you. There's a lot of other little adjustments you can do, but for now what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on the linear reflectance, which is 0.336. So that's the middle gray spot for DaVinci Intermediate. It's the sweet spot. So as you can see, if we toggle it on and off, we can see where our middle gray lands. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use the inspector tool. We're going to click on our gray square. It's going to automatically put a control point where our middle gray lands. This is important because we don't want to be manipulating our middle gray too much. That's going to be typically where our skin tones land, and we don't want to be causing any sort of chaos to our skin tones. We don't want to forget about labeling here. So we're going to just label this as our negative tone. Perfecto. I just want to clarify that with middle gray in DaVinci Intermediate, it is always at 0.336. That's a constant. It's not going to change depending on what cameras you're using. It's always landing at 0.336. So essentially it's landing at 33.6% across here. This is providing an anchor point. So we're not going to be dragging this one. This one is going to be staying as is. There's not going to be any adjustments being done to that control point. So the beauty about middle gray in DaVinci Intermediate is that it's based on a formula. So what's great about that is then you can get the neighboring stops as well. You can figure out what they are. For instance, if I want to place the toe at -3 stops, I'm not going to be guessing. I can actually visually see where that's going to land. And what I have done is I've implemented that into my DCTL. So if we just go to this ladder tool, if we go all the way to 4, we actually get to see our middle gray ladder and where each stop lands. You can adjust the ladder span in stops, so we can bring it up to 8 stops if we want, bring it down to 1 stop. For the sake of this, I'm going to bring it up to 8 here. That middle region is called the straight line, and on film it's where the negative responds faithfully. So equal steps in stops gives an equal or uniform change in density. I know it's kind of confusing, it's tough to wrap your head around. And I should mention that stops don't represent linear light either. So how far do we want to go with this? We essentially want to push it far enough that our image no longer looks flat and it has some shape and texture to it, but we don't want to push it so far that our skin starts looking hard and unnatural. If you find that you're past that and your image still looks flat, chances are you're dealing with an exposure problem. That just means you have to go back to your exposure node and reassess what is needed for it. So to start things off, I'm going to go 1 stop above my middle gray here, and I'm going to push it slightly up. As you can see, it's expanding our waveform. Just make sure you're keeping an eye on your waveform and how it's interacting with your adjustments. So I'm going to just do a slight adjustment here at 1 stop above. Now I'm going to go to the very end to stop 8, and I'm just going to actually drag it down. So I'm just going to compress our highlights. As you can see, especially in our brightest areas, it's just softening them and just allowing for a little bit more of a filmic highlight roll off here. So as you can see, before and now after, we've definitely introduced a little bit more life and a little bit more contrast to our highlights, which is what we want. It's no longer looking as flat and bland. And we've also allowed the highlights to roll off in a more filmic manner. This is creating a nice shoulder to our custom curve. And essentially a shoulder is when the highlights are no longer jutting up to the top of your waveform and are now allowed to just kind of roll off a little bit nicer and smoother. So on film, how it would work is the negative would keep gaining density as you add light to it, but by less and less each time, reaching a maximum gradually rather than just pumping up and hitting the ceiling as you do with video. A digital sensor fills up and stops dead at the ceiling, whereas film tapers. And that taper is what people mean when they say film handles highlights gently. All right, so let's dive into the toe side of things. On film, the shadows end up having a shallow slope, which results in the shadows getting squeezed or compressed together. And the main distinction that we should remember is that compression isn't the same as crushing. So on your waveform, the squeezed or compressed values will actually still be different from one another, which allows you to still pull them apart if need be. When we're shaping the toe, we want to decide how much we're going to compress the shadows. And we just have to remember that the moment that the bottom of our traces goes flat against the floor, we're no longer compressing, we're now destroying. So there's now no longer any information in those shadows. On a face, for instance, the contrast shouldn't be so harsh that you can no longer see the shape of the cheek. You want to still be able to see the features of that person. You don't want to crush your shadows or compress your shadows so much that you no longer can see any sort of features on the shadow side of the face. I'm just going to put a control point about right here. I'm just going to drag it down. So as you can see, if you drag it too far, it's just completely destroying our shadows and making our image look like a nice ripe cacao. So yeah, you want to just be very mindful. You can always hit Alt and it can bring it right back to the line there. Let's see. Yeah, we just want to, I want to see what it looks like before our contrast curve adjustment and then after. So let's just toggle it off and on. We're just trying to get rid of some of that flatness that our image had previously and just introduce a little bit more contrast and shape the overall look of our image. So already it's looking a lot better than obviously the raw version or even the version that we started with at the beginning of this tutorial. So it's really kind of amazing what a little bit of contrast adjustment can do for your image and for shaping the look of your image. So I might just go back to my shoulder and I might just slightly lower or play around with my highlight adjustment just to see what looks good here. Nice, so that's looking pretty good. Look at that, that shaped our image pretty well. We got a lot more depth to our image. The colors are popping. My face is shaped a little bit nicer. And yeah, you know what, I'm pretty happy with that. So essentially there's three main things that you want to have at the back of your mind at all times when you're shaping your curve here. The first one is, does your skin actually still read as skin? Or have you pushed it so far that it no longer resembles what human skin should look like? You don't want to fall in the realm of reptilian. Go to your vector scope, make sure it lands on that skin line here. So the second point that you should always keep in the back of your mind is, does your shadow detail survive when you're grading individuals who have darker complexions? If no, then you have to go back and readjust so that it does. If yes, then you've nailed it. You've perfected it. This one's important because a toe that might look great on someone who has a lighter complexion might just completely bury any detail in the shadows on an individual who has a darker complexion. So you want to just be mindful if you are grading clips with people of multiple complexions, then you have to basically go back and adjust your curve accordingly. And the third tip that you want to keep in the back of your mind is, do your highlights on your skin still have gradation? Or are they starting to look like paper? So you want to basically make sure that the highlights on your skin have a nice smooth gradation and they aren't extremely harsh. So as you can see here, our skin, our highlights here are looking great. Our skin's looking good. I mean, other than the few blemishes, but that's not the fault of the colors, that's the fault of the person. Anyways, so I would suggest, if you are following along with this tutorial, to use the clip that I provided here. If you can't download it or you don't want to use it, try using a clip that has a subject in it, so a human in it, just so you can see how it interacts with the skin, the highlights, and the shadows. But next video, next part of this series is going to be diving into the color side of things, the color of film, and how that comes about. So you won't want to miss it. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.